Conversation with Ron MacLean.
Welcome to In Conversation for our Friday, a special theme show with Melinda Harrison and Grant Clitsome. More on them in just a moment, but thought I'd begin with a story today that goes back to the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. Just before the canoe 500-meter men's final, Canada's John Wood is readying for the race, and he looks over at his arch rival, Alexander Rogoff of the Soviet Union, and he sees Rogoff has a problem. He's got oil on his hands, and he's trying frantically with fresh water and his spandex singlet to get the oil off of his hands, because a paddler, that's no good, right? So they think it was either a committee boat or one of the television camera boats. Oil from an engine leaked into the starting area water, and that's how Rogoff has this problem. And John Wood knows what to do. He's had this before in the past. So what he'd always done is kept a damp terry towel under his seat with sandpaper sewn in, and that would get the oil off the fingertips. And he looks at Rogoff and he thinks, I can't let his race be sabotaged by that misfortune. So he goes under his seat, reaches down, takes that damp towel with the sandpaper, hands it to Alexander Rogoff, and wouldn't you know it, in the championship gold medal final, Rogoff wins by 34/100ths of a second over John Wood. It's one of the greatest acts of sportsmanship and crazy silver lining stories of all time. Now, John Wood was a mentor to Larry Kane, an Olympic champion, to Adam Van Koeverden, an Olympic champion. He is absolutely revered in paddling circles. But in 2013, John died of mental illness that resulted in suicide. And that untimely death begat this book. This is Personal Next by Melinda Harrison. Melinda's book is not about John, but it's a gift resulting from the legacy of John Wood. More on that in a moment. It's about athletes in transition. And here's another book, After the Game, written by Chris Moynes, whose business partner is Grant Clitsome. 7 years in the National Hockey League for them with the Winnipeg Jets. And this book pays homage to Steve Montador, who died at the tender age of 35. His heart gave out 2 years after his retirement. And because we're going through a lot, mental health, they call it the echo pandemic right now. I thought we would have these two great elite athletes. That's who they were, an Olympic swimmer and an NHL hockey player. It's not who they are. They understand fundamental change. And today they're going to help guide us through the pivot points on an arc of transition.
Grant Clitsome, when he shoots the puck, everybody should take notice. Buckland tried to get it to him. Shot, score! Grant Clitsome wires it from the line.
Could have been up there just dangerous as heck.
Clitsome scores! Grant Clitsome fired it and may have been tipped.
Swimming and representing your country at the Olympics is just the most amazing experience. The discovery of where I can add value to the world has changed me. I want everyone to know that deep down inside of them, they have a DNA that can propel them to their next success. They just have to find it.
And there is my neighbor, Melinda Harrison, here in Oakville, and in Ottawa, Grant Clitsome. And Grant and I have been conspiring, Melinda, I hate to break this to you, but we're depending on you as a life coach, as an executive level coach, to maybe raise the questions that I think we all want during COVID-19, never mind transitioning athletics. But let's get your story first. Tell the viewer a little bit about your background, who you were and who you are now.
So my name is Melinda Harrison, and I'm an executive coach. I'm an Olympian, and also I'm the author of this new book out called Personal Next.
And Grant, your story.
Yeah, I'm an ex-hockey player and played for the Winnipeg Jets and Columbus Blue Jackets. I suffered a career-ending injury a few years ago, and now I'm working for one Sportsnet and one Capital Management to create the After the Game program, which is helping athletes transition to life after sports.
And that's really, Melinda, the gist of this is Grant, his partner Chris Moynes at One Sports and Entertainment are trying so hard to get players to avoid that valley right. That you know comes after your career. They're trying to convince them to pay attention to that story before they get into the valley. Do you think it's feasible?
I think that intellectually players actually understand that they're going to go through this messy middle period. The issue that I found in the research I did was that they weren't emotionally prepared for it. And I'm not sure that you can emotionally prepare for it. My experience is that when athletes finish a sport, they go through many different emotions. Some of them are actually relieved that they're done and they want to celebrate. But a few months later, they actually start to really feel some of the issues in that messy middle period. And that's when the challenges come up. So the answer to your question, a long answer to your question is I think that intellectually we can understand it. Emotionally, you actually have to experience it.
You make an interesting point. Colin Jackson, the great hurdler, he ended his memoir after his career was over. The last line is, "I am free," because no more pressure, right, to perform. Grant, go through your story a little bit. A back injury ends your career at the age of 31. So just all that came with that lack of confidence, lack of optimism, insecurity. What did you experience?
Yeah, it was quite the roller coaster. And to Linda's point, I think initially it's a bit of a feeling of relief. You're no longer under the microscope. You have a little bit of pressure alleviated from you for performing. You're no longer at the mercy of your GM or your coach and those schedules and the rigor of training. So the first little while is a sense of relief, a sense of excitement about what's next, what's to come, and then you start to kind of get in that slippery slope a little bit, or as Melinda calls it, the messy middle. And I think it's challenging because as an athlete, you have so much drive and ambition and focus, and you have all that to channel towards your athletic career, but now you no longer have that. So it's a bit of loss of identity. It's a bit of not knowing where and how to channel that energy, and just being able to make that step. And for me, it was kind of like when I played hockey as a defenseman, constantly moving my feet, trying to change the angle, looking for new opportunities, new passes, and things tend to open up. So I tried just continuing to move forward in life after the game. And that was going back to school. So I started with one of my interests, which was wine. And that led me to the sommelier program. And that kind of led me to starting a small business with my family. And we made an apple cidery. And that spurred my interest in business, which led me back to school again to my MBA. And it was really just keep my feet moving, keep busy, keep stimulated, stay active. Don't just sit and wait for something to fall in your lap. And so that was my approach. And then now here I am, very happy with the job I'm doing now, and hopefully having a positive impact on athletes. And
well, we'll get into a great program. You've connected with the David Eccles School at Salt Lake City University, so that's coming. Melinda, you listen to that, and I'm sure it resonates because you went through a lot of different career paths between Olympic swimmer in '84 and today.
I did. And, it's such an interesting thing that you said, Grant, because, what I found in the research is that, the individuals that went back to school, they actually had something to go to. And so, it's kind of like, okay, I have a program, I can stay on an autopilot life. As athletes, we're pulled along on a system, and that system, when it breaks, can really throw us off. So going back to school is a way that you can stay on a system. It doesn't mean that you find what you're meant to do, but at least you're making steps forward.
Well, tell us about David Eccles then, Grant.
Yeah, so we were very fortunate to find a great partner in the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. And they've been tremendous in working with us to create the programs we want to put together to help our athletes. And so that gives us the resources we need to have access to their career services center, where they have a small army of career coaches, and they can help with career exploration, resume building, interview prep, all those kind of skills that maybe you don't learn as an athlete throughout your career that can help you take that next step into the quote unquote real world. And then obviously their education programs as well. So they've been really great in working with us and putting together those programs. And one of the things that came out of it is an after the game summer business combine, we call it, which is a 5-day intensive kind of mini business career exploration type program that we're really excited about.
Did you do the Clifton strength assessment test?
I did, yes. And it was pretty impressive because I'm reading through it and I'm saying, okay, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me. So it's really good at identifying your strengths and weaknesses. But I found for me, what it helped was put it in a language that I could then use in a resume or in an interview and connect with executives or HR people that are hiring. And so that is where I kind of struggled, was making that connect with my skills in hockey and using that in the next phase of my life.
Go ahead, coach. I can see you're in on that too.
Yeah. So, one of the things I always say to my athletes is that if the things that you learned in your sport stay in the past, so too will you. And so, I love what you just said about learning to connect all those great attributes that you had and moving them to the next part of your life, because you can't stay in the past. If you do, then your life will remain there.
Well, you talk a lot about sharing, and athletes often reluctant to share, Melinda, because you
Yes.
really need that competitive edge, right?
Right.
So
It's a significant blind spot for them, because when you're on the ice or in the football stadium or in the swimming pool, you're not going to go up to your competitor and say, oh, I have a little bit of a headache, or my shoulder hurts, or you're just not going to share that. And in fact, and lots of times you don't even share it with your teammates. And so when you get into this next stage of your life, you're not used to sharing. The vulnerability takes time to learn to say, yes, I'm struggling. Yes, and I think that's why there's a delay in that period when retirement happens or injury happens. And then when you really start to ask for help.
Grant, you can go on that, but I do love your story about after a great career and a lot of confidence, now you're doing your executive MBA and you're thinking, good grief, I don't belong, but you found a way. So tell me about that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I agree with you, Melinda, wholeheartedly that there's that gap between your career coming to an end and not being prepared or willing to accept that it's over, but also being, whether it's pride or uncertainty, but not willing to look or ask for help. And I think that's why like such a big focus for me is trying to get these athletes to start the conversation while they're still playing. And I think it's so important to be able to start to build on those skills while you're still playing, because it'll just make for that much smoother of a transition.
What about your confidence? Sorry, Melinda, I just want to get the confidence story because
and I think that's a big part of it, because I think for people outside of athletics, they tend to view these professional athletes or even very successful amateur athletes at the college level or high school level or any level, really, they look up to these athletes as being these supreme, confident, successful people. And they are in their sport. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that's what they've been exposed to their whole life. And I think experience and failures and preparation lead to confidence. So when you take them out of that sport and you put them now in a completely new environment, it becomes difficult to have that same level of confidence, because Grant Clitsome, the hockey player, felt pretty good on the ice, but Grant Clitsome in a boardroom, I'm a fish out of water. So going back to do my MBA, I think was really powerful for me, because it was an executive MBA program. So the age range was pretty big, between 25 and people in the program were up to their 50s and various backgrounds, various work experience. And I remember sitting in the classroom my first day, just trying to hide in the back of the room, not hoping the professor wouldn't ask me a question, thinking I don't belong here. But quickly you get put into groups. And I think that's where I started to realize the skills I had as an athlete that I had learned and kind of taken for granted my whole life were very valuable in these group settings, and learning to interact with people and identify people's strengths and weaknesses and how we can leverage those and how we can communicate and how we can work together, how we can handle stress and multiple things happening at the same time. All those things kind of came to light to me in the MBA program when I started to realize that, okay, maybe I do bring stuff to the table.
Go ahead, Melinda.
Well, again, when your expertise is pulled away from you and you're put into a new situation, you're going to lose confidence. I think about a story of some of my NCAA athletes and, how they're so confident communicating with their cohort and fellow athletes, but put them in a situation where they're not comfortable. They call them NARPs, non-athletic regular people in the NCAA, and you throw them in with a NARP. They are so unconfident, and we have to learn to practice those skills. And so, I recommend that coaches actually put their athletes in situations with people that are not like them and force them to learn to have conversation and get comfortable in those situations.
For the viewers' benefit, 6-time All-American here, 4-time Big Ten champion and Olympian, Melinda Harrison. So you thought, and I saw an interview in Michigan in 1985, Melinda, where you're now coming to the end of your swimming career, and you say with aplomb, I was proficient for 11 years at this. I don't know what I'm doing next, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to succeed at doing whatever it is, right? You had a lot of faith. And then what happened?
And then I didn't. And then I didn't, basically. I graduated from Michigan. I thought I was on top of the world. I had a degree. I was a 2-time captain, had great leadership skills, great references. And I came to Toronto and I couldn't get a job. And not only could I not get a job, I couldn't even get an interview. It was the most humiliating experience. And it really threw me into a place where I hadn't been, because I had so much confidence. And so it took 3 or 4 months of me, trying to figure it out and trying to stop comparing myself to other people and start thinking about what I needed. And eventually I got that first job. And from that point on, I kept developing skills and got me to where I am today.
So Grant, you can follow that if you wish, or you can tell me a neat story about when you played for the Winnipeg Jets and did kind of a job shadowing exercise that at least gave you an idea of some of the other paths.
Yeah, so when I played in Winnipeg, a teammate of mine, Jim Slater, he started this segment with the team called Take a Jet to Work. And the concept behind the segment was really to connect with the fans and the sponsors and to kind of get to see another side of the player. So I got pulled into it pretty quick with Jim and quickly realized how cool it was to get exposed to all these different types of careers. And I was thinking to myself, as an athlete, I'm so focused on my sport and I know there's a whole world around me, but I'm almost in my little bubble and I don't fully understand what other jobs are out there, what other careers are out there. And so I started thinking how cool it would be if, as a player, whether on your own or through the team or something like that, you could almost set up any job shadowing like that, where you're going to work for a day as a Jet, but not for the camera, not for the fans, but really just to see what else is out there. And I think the point of that story is really to leverage your network and your resources while you're still playing, because after that, it's difficult sometimes to get that door open or get people to pick up the phone. So you're exposed to such an incredible network as an athlete, and to really leverage that while you're still playing can be really important.
So, Melinda, I'd like to take the conversation a little bit now to the citizenry. Obviously, these are elite athletes, Olympians and NHL players who find themselves trying to transition. But we're all going through COVID-19. And wow, I'd love to know your thought on the mental, and you said kids, never mind just people with careers on the line, kids too.
Yeah, one of my big concerns is for our younger athletes, because they again have been in this system of sports, and all of a sudden it's been pulled out from underneath them. And so I do have some concerns about how they're coping. But I think in general, the whole world right now is going through this messy middle. We're all trying to figure out how to adjust and how to move forward. And, the number one thing I keep saying to anybody that's going to listen to me is control what you can control, because you can't control this outside world. So, pick your spots, decide what exactly you want to control, and really focus on that.
There's a neat analogy, you're saying athletes in autopilot. The purser or the pilot will always come on at the beginning of the flight and say, in the case of an emergency, be sure to put your oxygen mask on yourself first.
Right.
And I would love to know, Grant, when you've tried to keep your family together, because divorce, you go through the list. It's denial, it's divorce, then it's maybe self-medication in that same, area, and eventually it's isolation is where you feel. So how does one look after oneself, live with the emotions they're experiencing? Grant, how did you do that?
I think it's really a person type issue and what works for you. But I think first and foremost, the thing you have the most as an athlete is structure. You know the rules of the game, your position, what you have to do, how to move forward. And so when all that structure is taken from you, you have to create your own structure. So you have to create a routine and a schedule and not get caught on that slippery slope of starting to sit on your couch and hope something will fall in your lap, or feel sorry for yourself, or get depressed, or self-medicate. But it's not easy to do. And I think having a good support system around you, having people that you trust and respect to talk to and be there to help, whether that's family, friends, or trusted advisors, it doesn't matter. Just having that strong support network is critical. But I think it's also important to point out that during the transition, it's not just the athlete that's affected, it's the whole family. And in some cases, it's the parents, it's the spouse, and maybe sometimes children too. they're accustomed to this certain lifestyle, and they're accustomed to being around a certain group of people and having a certain routine. And now all of a sudden that has all changed. So I think, those challenges arise because of so many different issues, but a lot of the pressure on the athlete is financial and loss of identity, and really being able to channel that energy.
Melinda, you can follow that, but that's a big one. Family is a huge concern for everybody. Financial is a huge consideration for everybody. And then motivation, to keep our motivation as we go on and on into this. So however you want to take that. And then I've got a question for you about books.
Okay. So, I agree. I'm with you, Grant, on that. That I was thinking about a story I was told in one of my interviewees. It wasn't one of the interviews. So if you read the interviewees at the back, it's not one of them. But he told me about an NHL hockey player that, had always had a team doctor and a team dentist. And he got a toothache after he retired, and he didn't know how to get a new dentist. And so he lived with that toothache for 6 months, 8 months, until it was so painful that he actually had to, find a dentist. And it was an extremely anxiety-ridden experience. So, that is some of the things that we never think about in this transition process, that, they're taken care of and now they're not.
So here's some books, and you'll know what they all have in common. This is Simon Keith, and, this is Adam Creek, who right, Grant?
Yeah, he was in my MBA cohort at Queens. Yeah, great guy.
Oh, great.
But you both know, but I should mention Simon Keith, double heart transplant recipient, the only guy to ever play pro soccer after having a new heart, and he just had another last year. Unbelievable story. Adam Creek, Olympic champion, Beijing. This is Jason Dorland, should have been an Olympic champion in Seoul, but it all went up in smoke, and they finished 6th and last, which is the premise of 2 great books he's written. This is Marnie McBean. These are all people you interviewed. So tell us about the process of asking. There's Sheldon Kennedy, and here's Paul Henderson.
Sheldon.
These are all people
goodness.
isn't that great? So go ahead.
Yeah, it is
103.
Great. Okay, so I'll be really honest here. I was terrified to call these individuals up and ask them for help. And, again, going back to what Grant said, it was not in the lane that I had operated in. And, those first 10, 15 interviews, I was actually shaking as I called up the individuals. But every single person I talked to, every single one of them said, yes, I'm going to help you because this is an issue we need to deal with. And so I so honor all 103 of those interviewees. They were so generous with their time. I asked them 48 questions. The questions are in the back of the book. And I'm just so grateful that they gave their stories, because that's how the arc and the practices came about.
When you read the book, Grant, Melinda's book, the thing that really jumped out is something you've often referenced, that you chose to be grateful, not regretful, at the tail end of your NHL career. It's easily said. I don't know how it was, but she asks 2 key questions. Who do you owe and who owes you, as a means of discovering gratitude? Did you try to answer those as you read the book, Grant? Or if I asked you that point blank right now, who do you owe and who owes you, could you answer?
Well, I don't know if anybody really owes me, but I'm extremely grateful for the support I've had through this transition from so many different people. The same people that helped me through my career, which are first and foremost my parents, obviously my amazingly supportive wife, and Chris Moynes was a big part of it too. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, and this after the game program wouldn't exist. And I think having that support network is really important when you're going through that transition. You have to be able to talk to somebody about it, and hopefully they can help understand what you're going through.
Melinda, gratitude. You go on that.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, there is bitterness in sport when you end. You assume you're going to have this great experience, and very, very few athletes end on a positive experience. And so we need to step back and get them to think, did they think they were owed something out of sport? Because when they went into it at the beginning, they went in with joy. But if you're coming out of it on the other side and you don't feel positive about it, you need to investigate why that is.
Grant, last word. And when you think about current players now, they have a chance to reflect. This is clearly they're worried. They're trying to think, oh my, are we playing this summer? But they say you don't live based on your experiences. You live based on how you reflect on those experiences. What would you say to the current player right now to use this opportunity this time?
Well, first and foremost, stay in shape and be prepared mentally for the game to come back, because that's you, that's your identity. But I think there's a lot more to you than just being an athlete, and thinking about life outside of sports, whether it's for an escape from the pressure of the everyday life of being a pro athlete, whether it's just discovering interests, or whether it's pursuing a hobby that you never really thought you had time to do. It's so healthy and productive to do that. And I think the sooner you can start that conversation and that mindset while you're playing, the better off you'll be when your career comes to an end.
It's funny, in the early 90s, I was at Kemper Lakes outside Chicago with Bob Cole, Harry Neal, Dick Irvin playing golf. And the guy playing all around us all day was Michael Jordan, who had a playoff game that night. I was absolutely agog that this guy whose obsession is his name had a hobby, something to break free of it. In your case, Melinda, the Olympic athletes have been told today, actually, they received a report from the On the Podium, Canadian Olympic and Paralympic committees, and all the national sport organizations dealing with risk assessment. When will it be safe to be together as a team? When will it be safe to go to the pool, the gym, etc.? But they said, don't peak this summer. Whatever you do, don't physically worry about peaking this summer, and take care of your mental hygiene, your emotional tolerance. They really emphasize the mental game. So tell me about the 2020 postponement of Tokyo and your advice to the Olympic athletes.
Well, what I would say to them is that you've got lots of time ahead of you. We all have dealt with injuries during our careers as athletes. And at the time you think, oh, I'll never get back in shape like I was. But being athletic and having that athlete DNA and that deep training behind you, you will. And this break can actually be a real bonus to you. You can actually, because we're not going in 2020. So you might as well just let go of this idea that is going to be where I need to peak. Plan to peak in 2021. I agree. Take this time, develop, your other muscles that perhaps have created injuries. Work with your physios, work with your coaches, work with your sports psych people, and we'll do it. We'll come together in 2021 and we'll perform great, because it's part of who we are as a country, and it's part of who the athletes are in what they really want. We have a great Team Canada.
What a gift you've given us with After the Game, Chris Moynes and you, Grant Clitsome, as I said, championing that cause with your tremendous program in Utah. And there's Personal Next with Melinda Harrison, Olympian and life coach. Thanks both. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, a huge thanks to Grant and Melinda. Where shall wisdom be found in conversation, for sure? We're back Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern and 4 o'clock Pacific. And I also want to point out, Wayne Gretzky's back with NHL Classics. Tomorrow evening, it's Lanny McDonald and the Calgary Flames from 1989. Amazing night at the Montreal Forum. As always, we close with a song lyric. Tonight, I always liked that empty road. No place to be and miles to go. Miles to go is miles away. Hello, sunshine. Won't you stay? The Boss. For all of us, hope you have a nice weekend. Thanks for watching, and so long for now.